It was very hard for me to be present with my family while not thinking about there's a lawsuit going on or whatever else, So we got to a point about 6 months ago where we made a very bold decision to basically have a semi-retirement. Like we've decided to shut our construction business down, and like it's no one's sort of that I've spoken to has questioned why would you do that? Like, are you going broke and stuff like that? Like over here, there's a website called House which rates GCs and stuff, and we've got 5-star rating. We've got like awesome clients. We were quite profitable. Our employees were happy, subcontractors happy, and stuff like that. But the thing is, like after Max was born, I realized I basically have until he starts school, until his first day of school. We've got this time where we can do whatever we want with our kids, right? And give them that good start in life. And then once they start school and they've got their own sort of structure and routine, we can jump back into doing whatever we want with our businesses. Like we own property and, and things like we've been good with investing. So financially we're at a place where we could do this. And that was in part thanks to me working, and same with Michelle, thanks to us working so hard over the last few years. And we kind of just decided, all right, let's just take 5 years off and just dedicate it to our kids. And then just, after that, we'll probably do like multifamily developments and stuff like that eventually. But for now, just leave it all aside and just do stuff with our kids. So I told you, we in September this year, we're going across to the States for 11 weeks. We're just hanging out there for 11 weeks. I've got a conference to go to, but other than that, just, there's no specific intention while we're going there. Like, we love traveling, so we want to do that with our kids. And we've also decided the year before Max starts school, we're going to go to Europe again for the entire year. And we'll do like 3 months in France, 3 months in Italy, 3 months in Greece, and 3 months somewhere else to try and decide. But the idea there is like we're spending basically as much time with our kids as possible before they start school and they go off and do that sort of stuff. And it really was like when Max was born, the sense of fulfillment that I got was like nothing compared to every one of my achievements leading up to that. And I was just like, all right. And it's sort of, like I said, it comes from my childhood because I didn't, I had a pretty challenging upbringing, I suppose. And I grew up going like the ideal, the number one goal, I suppose, is that I want to be a really good father, so everything I did, like, and even when I worked and stuff, the motivation there wasn't so much money and stuff like that. It was just like, I want to get to a point where I can provide for my family and them not having to go through what I went through sort of thing. And so when Max was born, going through my goals, I was like, I've ticked everything off with my career. Like there's nothing there that I feel like I haven't done and I need to hang in there sort of thing. And I said, I think it's time to, hang up the bags basically. And now if my goal is really to be a good father, how can I improve on that? And the easiest way is just time. Let's just give him more time. Because what I found out with kids, man, it's like you don't have to have an agenda or a plan or whatever. Like if I just sit on the couch with him for 2 hours, he's happy as. Like he'll just all he wants to do is just have me around and he'll play around me. Like I don't have to actually have a plan to, we're going to do coloring now or whatever. Like, he'll make his own games up. But if I'm not there or Michelle's not there, he's kind of longing for us to just be present, basically. And getting rid of the business meant, I don't get phone calls, I don't get emails and stuff like that. So I don't mentally switch off. It's nice and wrapped up, and I can just mentally be present. And it's been quite great. So it's a bit controversial, like giving up your business for that. But I think it's at the end of the day, like you kind of ask yourself, why do you have certain goals? Why do you want to run a successful business? Why do you want to, make so much money and stuff like that? And for me, the end was always family. So I was like, I'm just going to start with what's on the right and work my way to the left. Like it's not easy being a parent, right? And I'll give an example. Like I listened to your podcast with your father, right? And I was like, I don't have that relationship with my dad. And I looked at that going, I hope that one day I have this sort of relationship with my kids where we can converse and, you know, and have that sort of stuff. And it made me realize that I don't have a compass or like a blueprint of what to do as a father, right? And that's why I'm looking at reading books and educating myself and stuff like that. But part of that as well is obviously when you're struggling or when I'm struggling with something, I need to talk to my friends or my father-in-law or other people that have had kids so I can find out what to do. Again, if I'm realizing if I kept the same mentality or I just keep it to myself, probably not gonna end well in the long term. Yeah. Right. So I'm a big proponent of people just opening up conversations about what they're struggling with. And I don't really see it as a weakness or whatever. It's just that, hey, there's this thing that's an issue for me. I don't know what the solution is. What have you guys done? And then you learn to be better.
You know, my kids genetically are unlikely to be collegiate athletes, right? So I want them to work hard and work with teammates that they like, and achieve goals. And so I kind of think like every kid should be on a team that wins a championship, a team that loses in the championship, and a team that loses every single game that year, right? Because it's really just, it's character building and it's overcoming obstacles. I don't push my kids that hard, except you got to show up. Like if you, so most recent All-Star tournament, I benched my son for making a face at me after he gave up a goal, and I said something to him, right? Okay, come sit down. Like, I don't care that you gave the ball away and they scored. I care about your reaction to that. And so if you're walking on the field, you're coming off, right? But we don't do like the over the top clinics and the private instruction. We really don't get wrapped up in our kids' sports identity all that much. Right or wrong, it's just not something that we've done. I just want them to work hard, make friends, win sometimes, probably lose more often than you win, and ultimately like compete for a spot on a team, right? Because I think that's important too. But for now, I just want them to have fun. I want to do a better job of exposing my kids to other parts of the world and what other people have, right? We spend so much time staring at the Kindle, right? Or watching YouTube or whatever else, like, and it's not reality, and it's this feedback loop of like the things that you've already liked. It's going to just show you more and more of it. And so I'm working on spending more deliberate time taking my kids out into the real world and showing them more and more of that. And then as they get older, I think exposure to other kind of athletic endeavors, like get off the couch, let's go hike in the woods, let's go swim in the lake, let's do stuff that's not kind of cookie cutter, the sports that everybody else is playing. Let's go pick up some skills and just get out in nature a little bit.
One of the biggest problems I had being a dad and being in the military is I have two different worlds where I have to act like two different types of people. Oh yeah. Yep. Right. And so I've always had a decent commute coming from home and to work and vice versa, where I try to get into a different mindset. And I've noticed that over the years, I've kind of loosened up a little bit, but in my early years in fatherhood, I was very rigid and I was not approachable in any way. And I would tell you to do something and I just expected you to do it. There is no conversation. Your dad told you to do this, go do it now, and I want you to do it very well. And if you don't, then I'm going to criticize you for not doing it well, and then we're gonna have a disciplinary issue after that. And that's the wrong way to do it. It doesn't create any sort of loving environment. This is just rigid. My dad told me what to do, and that's what I'm going to do, and that's it. But as I've gotten older, and I've gotten a bit more experience, and especially now that we have a grandchild, you can kind of see exactly where you screwed up in life. The older you get, the wiser you become, if you're paying attention. And you can look back and say, man, that was really dumb. I should not have treated my children that way. I shouldn't have treated my wife that way. At the time, I thought it was right. I thought I was making the right call, and I can't blame myself for that. But looking back now, I was just an idiot. And I think most men generally are idiots until they're about their mid-30s. But when you're talking to your children, you want them to have that sense of fear of their parents, much like you have a fear of God. But what you don't want them to do is be scared of you. You don't want them looking at you and saying, I don't understand why he's doing this. Does he not like me? Does he not love me? Does he not want to be with me or hang out with me anymore? Is he just doing this to be mean? And at a certain point, you have to start explaining things to them. You have to start allowing them to ask you certain questions, because otherwise you're going to damage the relationship. Their perspective of you is going to be 100% dependent on how you interact with them. And if you are always a tyrant, that's the perspective that they're going to have of you for your whole life. And is that what you want of your children? Or do you want them to have a memory of you of, he was always very firm, but I understood why, and it made sense. There's a big difference in that, right? And being firm and loving and all of those can go hand in hand, but you have to have a purpose, you have to have a reason. You can't just tell your kids to do something because you don't want to. Being a lazy parent is not an excuse to have your children do everything. Yeah. It's not an excuse to have them go out and mow the lawn or to clean the dishes because you don't want to do. You also have to pull your own weight around the house too. Even though that, yes, my job is to provide and create this house that you live in. Yeah. I still have to model what that looks like to live inside of it. And I didn't have kids to create slaves. I didn't have kids to have servants in my home. I created them to have a loving environment, much like I believe God created all humankind to do, to have that relationship. And if I force them into loving me, much like God gave us free will, it's not much of a relationship. Yeah. And you gotta focus on that at some point. You gotta realize that your communication is pretty paramount in that relationship. Yeah. And as they got older, I noticed how it impacted them, and I tried to modify it where it was. I didn't feel guilty after talking to them.
One of the bigger fears I have as a parent is the fact that, I'm sitting here talking about my dad and he was wonderful. And I'm talking about some of the places I wish he would have done or things like that. The thing is he did a great job, the best he can. And so are we. And the thing that terrifies me is there's something that we've done that we might not know that's screwing them up, at some point in their lives. We did homeschool our kids for a while. My daughter, once she started first grade, and then my son all since kindergarten. And when we started to enter into 2019, my daughter started having some pretty significant health issues with, it flipped like a switch. It was one of those things where one month in December, over Christmas time, we were doing daddy-daughter dates, where we're going out for burgers and ice cream and all this kind of stuff. And by January, she was, restricting eating, not eating anything, and having a lot of fears around food. And it turned into a pretty severe eating disorder. And that became, kind of our primary, that shifted our focus, from, just the traditional parenting. That was the Mike Tyson punch in the face that we got, where it was now we've got to come back and we've got to help a child recover and work through this, and also work with another child who's, seeing a lot of this and a lot of the behavioral issues and that, that's still going on to this day. It's so it's still an issue we deal with, though she's in recovery. But that led into, that happened within a few months of COVID happening. And then we dropped into COVID where we couldn't bring her into facilities. We couldn't, and there was a lot of, so there was a lot of well, you're on your own kind of stuff. And so that whole thing of us being on our own for as long as we were and trying to learn and figure out via trial and error how to manage this and best parent through this. Led us down to the point of, a bit of exhaustion, if we're honest, of like, by the time school opened up, we got with our kids and we said, well, this has been a pretty heavy deal for all of us. How do you guys feel about going to school and doing it, with a class and with, more of your peers, since you haven't been in that for so long? And they were like, yeah, we want to do that. So, so they went into the traditional school, and I think it was that, for us, at least at that time, was a big relief for, my wife to have that. And with my daughter being in and out of treatment, that has helped, my son to be able to still get the learning and the attention that he needs while doing it. So very personal reasons. And it's not because we're not huge advocates and love the idea of homeschooling, because we do, but it was more out of, kind of a necessity and a feeling like that was probably the best option for us at the time. There's the idea that, structure helps in that kind of chaos, so having that level of structure really helps, especially for, I'd say, my son right now. Even though he hated the idea at first, he really didn't like going back to school and like a lot of that. And I get it. And one of the things I'm really proud of him for is kind of embracing that fear and realizing, that this is an opportunity. This is, yes, a scary thing, but this is not scary like I should avoid it. This is scary. I should lean into it and grow from it. And he really has. He's embraced it. He's doing really, really well in school. He's in middle school now, so he's just going into 7th grade. And he's starting to get like friends, and I've just seen him blossom and really grow from that. My daughter's kind of been in and out of school with some of these challenges. So, but she's been able to keep up kind of on the outside a little bit. So she's going back within the next few weeks, and that should be exciting to see what happens. Mm-hmm. And ultimately where I'm at now, is as I engage with my kids, I really just try to open the door to, like, when they talk about a passion or something that they have in their mind. My goal with the mindset that I have is to encourage them to follow whatever it is, not think of not think of this financial security first. They'll figure out a way to take care of that. But if they have a drive to do something, whether it be engineering or music or art or something like that, let's lean into that passion and think of a business model or some kind of opportunity that you can get into with that. I want to give my kids the sensation and the belief to know. I guess that the one thing that I want to get them to understand is that, within the grounds of the law and physics, that they are free, that they have freedom to do whatever, that they want to do. And if that means, like, hey, joining the company, they don't like it, they want to leave, then they leave, then hey, that's great. Or they want to start their own thing and do that. That's great. And just hopefully guide them in a direction that is moral and ethical, and that they enjoy and gives them fulfillment and happiness.
As you get older, the only thing you realize when you're parenting, what you really need to do is you need to create adults who are loving, adults who can make up their own decisions, young adults who can make those decisions, and they're ultimately going to leave. And you're not there as an entrepreneur to fix their problems. You're there to be by their side and walk with them. And when they do have a problem, they can come to you and say, hey, Dad, here's the problem. And you're not able to fix anything. That's not our job, is to fix. Your job is just to be there, to lend guidance, to lend support. That's how I've transitioned my thought processes over the last 6 or 7 years. And, the oldest daughter, she actually went to college. When she was a freshman, she was in theater and music and in the whole Hollywood thing. And after 6 months, she's like, Dad, I want to tell you something. I don't like this at all. She goes, I want to go into youth ministry and philosophy. Best thing I ever heard in my entire life, because I didn't want to do theater. But you'll start learning as you have children, when you're telling them your own thoughts and what they're supposed to do, even though you're right, they're going to go against what you say for the most part. They need to go through those experiences and those challenges. My son at the time when he started college his freshman year, it was challenging. I mean, like going from a homeschooling environment to a classroom environment where, the teachers aren't the greatest. They throw homework at you. They don't explain anything to you. He was struggling in the beginning with Excel and all that. And I remember just seeing the tears and the sadness. And that is the hardest thing as a parent, to sit back and to say, you know what, he has to go through those challenges. What is it? Iron sharpens iron, or whatever the saying, pressure makes diamonds. And if we don't allow our kids to suffer a little bit and to grow, and we're always there to help them with that soft landing, that's not going to build resilience in our children. That was a really hard lesson for me, to sit there and watch them cry about homework, because it brought back memories for myself when I was in school. And I was challenged. I'm like, I don't really know what the heck I'm doing here either, and my parents couldn't help me. They're both Italian. They're not school types, so I struggled as well. So I wanted to take that struggle away from him. I think the only thing you can do as a parent is to be there to support them and to lend an ear and to help them in any way possible, but not actually solve the problem for them. Let them solve their own problems. I always wanted them to learn about money and just having those conversations, those open conversations, letting them in. I think budgeting and sharing a home budget with children, no matter what age, and showing them the value of money. Go into a grocery store with $50, and that's all you have, or 100, whatever it is, and buy the groceries for $100, and you see how far it goes. Let them understand what the value of money is. They're too young to understand savings and investing at that age. When they get to be in their teens, then they'll start to be naturally curious and inquisitive. My 14-year-old, the other day, we're talking about life insurance and whole life, and I love whole life, and I pull up a policy for her, and she looks at the policy. I got them all 6 kids. She sees the death benefit. I said, here's your death benefit. And she's like, I'm worth $1 million. I said, only if you're dead. I don't want you to be dead, but I got this for you. There's cash value in there. You're saving money every year. So she's understanding now the savings component. She's understanding life insurance. She's understanding the value of death. She already had a job, so money was going into her account for paychecks and for that. So don't try to push things on them. Let the conversation take over naturally. Some kids will gravitate towards the subject. Some kids don't. Find the genius in each child and let each child, attract to their genius. My 14-year-old that I'm talking about, she hates school. She does not like reading. But she's very athletic. And when she finds something she likes, she'll latch onto it and she'll crush it. But if I'm sitting there and telling her to do this and do that, she's going to rebel and she's going to hate school. Your 2 sons who walked in right now, how is it we can put those kids in school for 8 hours and expect them to sit watching? It's not even natural. It makes no sense whatsoever. And everyone has ADHD. No, the whole system is not created for education. There's no education involved. It's more of indoctrination. And that's the problem with the school system right now. So your child, you may be saying to yourself, oh, he's struggling in school. Find out what he or she really likes and let them do more of that, because they'll gravitate towards that. They'll get confidence around that. They'll start to enjoy that. Then they'll see other things. And the other thing is, math may not be a fun topic for most kids, but make it relatable to life skills. Bring them out. Let them see when they go to the store how much change they need to make. Make it practical. Because if they're sitting there reading something, like we all went through it, why do I need to know calculus? I don't want to learn it if I'm not going to be able to use it. So when the kids are younger, teach them skills that they're going to be able to learn as they go throughout life, and find out what their geniuses are and focus on what they really like. And don't be afraid of other subjects, because they'll catch up. I mean, we rarely did sciences during our school years for homeschooling in high school. It's just more challenging. But now my 17-year-old is going to massage school, and she's learning all about pain management, body work. She's learning all about bones and skeletal. She loves that stuff now. We never really went hard into it, but now she's found a passion to it, and that's what she's going to school for. So find out what they like and focus on that. They're living, growing entities. They're constantly changing. What you knew when your child was 2, you're going to be a different parent when your child is 22. So you need to continue to process and continue to learn, continue to be flexible as well. And for us, it just, I don't say it came naturally, but she was home raising the kids, and then I'm coming home. We have that great open relationship. We're able to communicate. So if you're having struggles with the communication aspect of it, set up a level 10 meeting. Maybe do a quarterly priority with your children. My friend Jim Shields wrote a book called 18 Summers. It's a great book.
I love that
really
book.
Simple book, but I mean, I don't know, like whoever thought about doing a quarterly meeting with your kid and let them choose whatever they want to do. You want to go to the park? You want to go on trampolines for the day? Whatever you want to do. And you spend that time 4 times a year, 4 days with each child. I mean, that is a great way to bond, great way to build. And to be able to build those rhythms within your business, you should be able to build them within your family as well.
I raised my children in a much more what I would consider traditional, like I didn't have religion growing up, right? My dad was Muslim, my mom was nothing. They just decided not to be involved in it. He was involved in his faith probably till I was about 8 or 9, and then he gave up on it as well. So I was like, I don't want my kids, I want my kids to have more structure. So that was very important to me from the very beginnings. So our kids have been in a gym since they were born. It's funny. My son trains at one of our franchises that we part own now, and all the clients are like, "My God, he has the best form I've ever seen." I'm like, "Well, he's been doing this since he was 1." We had little like 1 pound weights for them, and so and they, looking back on it, like I've asked my kids about this now. I'm like, were you guys really aware? Because we tried to hide a lot of it when the finances were really bad. Like literally, we had people coming to the door to say, when are you going to pay your mortgage? Right? Those people that they hire, like awful. Right?
Yeah.
The doorbell would ring and I'd go running so the kids wouldn't, because they'll work the kids. They'll say, Dad hasn't paid his bills and all that kind of stuff. And I said, how much did you know? And they said, we knew. Like we knew it. Yeah, we were a little bit scared, and we knew you guys were going to always feed us and all that, but we were wondering if we were going to not be able to stay in school and all that kind of stuff. And so we tried, but what I did through that time is once they became cognizant, I tried to teach them. Do you remember what it was like 7 years ago? Like we were traveling all the time, and Dad was flush with money and buying moms all kinds of gifts. And now you notice, like, I don't even go to Starbucks anymore, right? Like I literally, and they're like, and I said, that's what it is to be an entrepreneur. And there's nothing wrong with that if your personality fits it. I can see, like, my son's personality. He's definitely, by the way, he's looked into the military, which is pretty cool. He's looked into the FBI. Everything he's looked into being a pilot. Right? They have a great pilot program.
Come talk to me. I know about all three of them.
I know you do. That's what I'm just thinking. This is so cool. I want to set up a call with you guys. But everything is steady paycheck, pension after 20 years. Like he's gone to, I see him headed that way because he's a total, like on the Myers-Briggs, he's the opposite of me. On the Enneagram, he's the opposite of me. My daughter, I could see being more of an entrepreneur. She's much more of a risk taker. And they're both fantastic. Love them both to death. But they both were raised in the same environment. Right. Yeah. And now you see, like, my daughter's like,
part of its nature, part of its nurture. Yeah.
Yeah. I might open a dance studio. I get it. And I keep telling her, remember, you're going to have great years and you're going to have challenging years. You're going to have good months. You're going to have bad months. And you just have to know that. And I said, the highs are way higher and the lows are way lower. Yeah. And if you like that, I do, again, I prefer that. And I feel like we did a pretty good job because I am, like, now that they're older and they're adults, I check in about all this. Like I've asked them many times. I do dates with my kids, like separate. I'll have dinner with my son. I'll take my daughter out on a date, and I'll say, did you know what was going on in our marriage? Like, we know it all, Dad. They're so cognizant. They're so smart, and I think they appreciate that you're not like sharing everything with them when they're 5 years old. I think that's super smart.
I think it's maybe worth discussing. Like, I do think that I'm concerned that we might oversteer from, not having great relationships to, it could be oversteered a little bit to like now being friends only and not parents of our children. And so I think that is a line of caution that I look at and hope that others look at too. I think it's really important to be, close to your child, but it's different than being friends with your child. Yeah. We still have to be parents. We still have to be the role model. Our driving motivation can't be being liked. We can't have our kids meeting our emotional needs. We can enjoy them. We can love them. We can just have the most fun with them. That's awesome. But I think that there is a toxic level of closeness to kids. I see parents that are just like slave to their kids' schedules and their kids' emotions. And it's like, wait a minute, like, who's the parent here? And what are you doing to model for them? Are you setting them up for success? Because ultimately, like, that's what we're doing. We're raising kids that are going to become adults, and they've got to one day be parents. And so we've got to be teaching them these things, and that's hard. That's hard sometimes. It's not easy, and it doesn't always feel good. So we're talking about like the discipline and then the relationship. Both of those have to be instilled like early on in the child's upbringing, as early as possible. And ideally, that starts at birth and is continuous and goes right through the teen years. And so when you're giving the discipline or giving the correction and keeping them on a path to understand proper morals and proper boundaries and those sorts of things, like it becomes not very easy, but easier through those teen years. Similarly with the relationship, you've got to have the relationship to be able to give the correction. And that's what helps build the trust. And similarly, like you can't start trying to build that relationship. It's going to be much more difficult if that doesn't start until the teen years or the young adult years, because now, again, they're already on a path. Whereas when you build that relationship early on, it just really primes the pump for the important conversations and discussions and the trust that's already built when those teen years come along. And I'm really starting to feel this because my son just started 7th grade yesterday, and I feel like we're right on the precipice of more and more of these just tough friend situations and girlfriends and just all of those school things that think back to your teen years, and today it's so much more challenging. I want to have that trusting relationship with my son. And I've been very intentional with trying to build that for us to be in a place where when he encounters a sticky situation or a tough situation, or he's had a tough day, somebody said something, or, he got, dumped by a girlfriend, like I'm going to be there to be able to talk with him about it. And I know there'll be a day will come that he might be more likely to go talk with a friend about that. But I hope that still, somewhere in that process, he comes to old dad and we're able to talk about it, and I'm going to be able to keep sharing wisdom with him, and I have been doing that for some time now. And so I hope that it will be very natural for that to happen when that time comes. I remember when we were in premarital counseling, my wife and we went and did premarital counseling. We actually had 2 different pastors that were part of our wedding ceremony. We did premarital counseling with each of them. One of them, we went to his office for a session, and right behind him on his, the bookshelf similar to what you have there behind you, and it said, there was a little sign that said, "The best thing that a father can do for his children is to love their mother." And I remember seeing that as a 2-year-old and thinking, oh, I don't know if I agree with that. That seems kind of like, I feel like there's a lot more things that a dad should do for his kids. But man, as my life has went on and I have seen carnage in families, and I've experienced my own, challenges and dynamics with my wife and kids, I see the wisdom in that. And so I do, not that you can't be a good dad if you're not with your children's mother, but if there's still an opportunity to do that, and it is a commitment, and it's hard, but it is one of the very best things we can do for our kids. So, but it's great to have this opportunity to just talk about some of these things and to compare notes, and to I think hopefully both be reassured that we're not getting it too wrong, and that we're at least on the right track, and that we step off the path, we make some mistakes, but then we get back on it, and we're doing it with intention. And I think that that's really important, that when we set our minds that this is something that's important to us, and we support it with our calendar, and we make the time for our families and for our kids, that we'll get the right results over time. So, I hope that there's somebody out there that needs encouraged in that. Maybe they made some mistakes, as I have for sure. That then if you're still being a dad today and you're giving it your best, what's done yesterday is over with, and we have today that we can make a difference. So let's do it to the best of our ability.
we go to Disneyland once a week. It's 15 minutes from our house. We go to Disneyland once a week for a few hours after school. We go to the beach once a week because we live not that far from the beach. And, we've gone on vacations to Hawaii. This past summer, we went with our kids. We went for 2 months in Europe and traveled around Europe. And it was life-changing, epic experience to do that, especially with our kids. And we learned a lot about ourselves and our family and our kids and bonded a lot. And, so like looking back at it, it's like, man, we went through so many hard times and life felt so overwhelming, but life was still so good. You know what I mean? Like if we could, just in the midst of the difficulty, and you hear a lot about this, like, write the things you're grateful for and like try to be grateful for stuff every day. And I was doing that. I was trying to write down things I was grateful for, but in the moment, I didn't realize like, life sucks on one hand, but on the other hand, life's so good, you know, and there's even though it was so hard, like we still were so blessed, and we still were able to do things that a lot of people don't get to do. And how it all worked out, I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. But part of it is my wife went back to work as a teacher to kind of help float things. It's like, that's a lot of our conversation now. And now that we've had this trip to Europe, not to jump too far ahead, but our conversation is more around like, I think it opened my wife's eyes to life doesn't have to be like what it has been and what everybody else does. Like you can make a life that's different from what most people do, and you can still do that. Like, right. You can design your own life essentially. And that trip really impacted that. And so our conversations more recently have been around like, okay, what do we want life to look like? And let's build that life, let's do that. So that doesn't really answer your question about how I could talk differently. But I think going forward, because it's not going to be an if, it's going to be a when we go through difficult times again, business or whatever. I think maintaining that focus on where is life good, and just, it's that whole, you say, a yellow car and then you see yellow cars everywhere thing, right? Like what you're looking for,
system.
What you're looking for, you're going to find, right? So be on the lookout for where life is awesome. And another little motto we adopted on that trip is do hard things for cool things, right? And I think that just applies in business. It applies, when we're like, oh gosh, we got to go on this hike and my kids are whining. And I'm like, look, we're going to get to this sick waterfall. We can go swimming and jumping off cliffs when we get to the end of this thing. So let's do some hard things to do some cool things, right? And, going through those hard times, sometimes you got to go through those hard times to get to the cool times.
Many times, like we caught up like 0 to 5. Oh, they're cute, they're adorable. But at the point, like you have to realize, like, hey, it's no longer adorable. It's no longer tolerable, right? I mean, for example, like you saw your kids like running around in the underwears. Like, when they're 3 years old, it's fine. It's cute, it's adorable. The moment like they become like 8 years old, you have to become like, hey, you got to put your boundaries. Like we got to evolve too. But at one point, like you got to start realizing, like, to what point that you want to educate them and coach them, or the way you interact with them need to be evolved. I mean, remember like a couple of years ago, I started telling people, my son, like, you evolve, I need to evolve too. But at the same time, we need to realize, like, things that you did when you were little is no longer becoming fun, but becoming annoying, or maybe perceived like immature for some people. So that's where I can guide you, but you need to let me do it. And then you also need to be open to do that. And also you need to tell me to what degree that you want me to told you that. So that then we can help balancing each other. Because otherwise this is going to be a war every day, right? Dealing with teenager. I've seen people like, I've seen my friend putting a Facebook post at one time, like, hey, 14-year-old throwing a tantrum is going to be, 10 times X of the 7-year-old tantrum. And I believe that, if we don't really evolve as a parent too. So I think we understand, respect the boundaries, respecting that they're also turning into an adult and they're trying to find themselves, trying to identify themselves as they're growing up, finding their identity. That we just need to guide them and coach them from there.
When it comes to raising your son, what would you go back and whisper in your ear, 4 or 5, 10 years ago, whatever it is?
I think I would listen to him more and engage in conversation rather than driven by my emotion. Because many times it's just like jump into conclusion without asking why you're doing this, and then engage in conversation. Because we feel like that's the only. Sometimes we feel like that's the only way to do it without asking a reason. But as an adult, there are many different ways to do it. Maybe that's the reason behind it. Why? A kid doesn't want to do it maybe because he's timid, and maybe just his personality is not quite there yet, and maybe he's so afraid or scared to do it. And it's our job, especially me as a father, that I need to be able to guide him and navigate through that, that emotion with him, to take in. Maybe he was right. Maybe he has a right to be feared for whatever reason. Maybe he has a right to be scared for whatever reason. But it's my job as a dad that need to be able to navigate him so he can manage that emotion.
The 5 year ago Nathan, or the 10 years ago Nathan, 20 years ago Nathan, I think they're all different. And so what I believe to be the most true and the most helpful things, I try to be, one of the things I love about Joe Rogan is that he has a bigger audience than any news program, or all news programs in the certainly in the United States. I don't know internationally, and he's willing to just be wrong, and I want to be willing to be wrong. And the version of Nathan today is the person who is learning to understand and listen faster and be more patient. And so that's what I mean by it. And the Nathan of 5 years from now, by the way, I never talk about myself in the third person, but, me in 5 years, I hope to be a much better person, a much more understanding person, a much more, all those things, because I think stagnation is death, and I can't stand the thought of that. Being a better man also means we are truthful and honest and take ownership when we screw stuff up too. And that's one of those places where it's been a growth edge for me, which means my son's name is Colin. Hey Colin, I'm sorry for getting upset. It was an appropriate response, and I was frustrated in the moment, but it didn't matter because that wasn't the way to respond. So I'm sorry for doing that. I'm sorry, but you're being a real pain. We could talk about the thing that maybe needs to be changed, but also how do we as people do a better job? When your kids are a little younger than mine, so I think that has a different feeling to it too, because it's hard to tell your 4-year-old hey, I'm trying to work on this project. Can I tell you about it? I need to put a little focus time. And instead, for me now, it's more of having an honest conversation. And it's funny. I start every day, by the way, with I go for a walk. I have written gratitude, written focus for the day, and I track everything every day too. So I'm very intentional with every part of my life. But I'm walking with my daughter, and I ask her, "Hey, Grace, where can I do better?" So I just ask her, randomly on a walk, and she's kind of perplexed. She's like, "Well," I'm like, "No, seriously. I want an answer. I want a real answer." And she said, "You work too much." And I said, "Okay, well, tell me what it would look like. What does it look like to not work as much to you?" Because that's the other thing too, is having that present time. She is super happy, and as soon as we get off this podcast, by the way, she's literally, it's daddy daughter. We're hanging out. Nice. So she is just as happy, literally cuddled up on the couch, watching a movie or something. It doesn't have to be any sort of thing. It doesn't have to be at cost. And so I think it's it's really recognizing what is the thing that they, wife, kids, whatever, are actually asking for. Mm-hmm. And then how do we actually serve that versus this feeling of like, gosh, I need to, insert this amount of time or this sort of thing or whatever. It's like, instead now I just I'm going to ask what actually makes a difference? What do you need from me? And how can I better serve you as your dad, as your husband, whatever? I think the other way we can ask those questions, and even with a younger kid, is like, when do you feel most loved with your dad? Like, when do you feel most loved? Or what is the most fun thing you can remember us doing together? Or if you could do something every day with me or us together, what would that be? And so I love structuring those questions and the things we learn from psychology and coaching and sales. And there's another great book, Never Split the Difference. Everyone should read that book. It is a brilliant book. Is we take those same tools and we apply them, actually apply them to your life. So I try very consciously to do that.
We started homeschool a couple of years ago. That was a big shift, and she wanted to do it. So we've learned a lot about the discipline of what it takes, and I've been very adamant that it's her responsibility. Right? This is her business. This is her ownership. This is her learning opportunity. I'm here to support you. Right? So we've seen cheating, we've seen lying, we've seen all these different little things that have happened, and me being able to be there and be like, it's okay. Why did you cheat? Because you were afraid that you were going to get in trouble from me? No. You created that. I didn't create it. I didn't create that. That's something you're putting in your own head. I've never, ever punished you or got upset with you because you didn't succeed at something. The only times I ever punish you is when you lie to me. That's it. Yeah. That's our number one value, is that we're going to trust and we're not going to lie to each other, because the last thing I want to do is be sitting in a household with people that I love and they're lying to my face. You want to trigger me to the next level? That's the biggest trigger. That's the hardest thing for me to overcome, is that when I have someone that loves me, that's my family right there next to me, they'll look me dead in the eye and lie to me. There's one incident that's created this fear that makes them think that lying is going to avoid that, being back in that space where they didn't feel like you cared and loved for them and wanted them to be there. Right? And it could be the silliest, you won't even, it could be the silliest thing, but it's just ingrained in their head. This image is ingrained in their head. Right? And as they get a little bit older, you'll see with your boy between this 8 and 11, these are when you'll dig it out of him. Right? You'll dig it out of him if you just keep having the conversation, just keep reminding him, I love you, I trust you. The last thing I'm ever going to do is punishing you for telling me the truth. I mean, I've had to have conversations with my daughter. I said, look it, baby, if you go and drive over someone and kill them in the car and you run away, you come to me and you are going to figure out how to not get in trouble. I'm your guy. Right? There's no one else. To that extreme, I'm your guy. I'm going to help you get out of anything possible that's going to go on in this world. There's no one else that's going to be there for you like I'm going to be there for you. Right? So don't ever put me in a situation where I don't know what's really going on. Don't ever put me in that situation, because I'm not going to be able to help you. And there's no one on this planet that's going to go to bat to help you like I am or your mother's going to. And just continue. It's just a continual thing. You just got to keep, and then showing them that you're truthful, you're real about it, right? Not reacting because they got a bad grade, not reacting because, they didn't win a game. You know what I mean? You're reacting, you didn't put in the effort. Let's talk about the effort that you put into this, right? Let's talk about, didn't you tell me you studied all night last night? Well, you didn't, right? I can see here on your screen that you were watching Netflix. So what's really going on? It's long as I think as long as you're consistent over time, you'll go through these waves as they grow. And ultimately for me, it's all about, before these teenage years, make sure I lock in this trust.
3-4 months ago, we had a real estate deal that we were working on very heavily, spending a lot of time on. And I went in to tuck my boys in for bed and lay with them for a few minutes. And my youngest son, Hudson, said, "Dad, could mom just lay with me instead of you?" And I kind of looked at him and I looked back at my wife and I said, "Why, Hudson, why would you say something like that? It's my turn." And he goes, "Well, because you're always on your phone. When he's laying in bed, I'm on my phone."
Yeah.
And I talk about stab right through the heart. But I was breaking my own rule. I mean, I was not being present when I had the ability to be present and just lay there and hug him and pray over him and talk to him as he goes to sleep. And he said, "No, you're always on your phone." So I have to find those things. And I've told the boys, my wife and I both have told our boys, call us out. If you ever see us not looking at you when you're talking to us, like we demand they do for us, call us out. Say, "Dad, put away your phone." I mean, hearing a 7-year-old say, "Dad, put away your phone and listen to me," that helps. That helps make your mission really clear. I've told my 11-year-old, I've said, "Listen, there's going to be a time where you think I'm wrong all the time, but experience is on my side, and I'm just trying to give you a shorter path to success than I had." And having those conversations, I think, does that to where hopefully they get to that other stage much faster. And I've got friends that are still angry with their dads, but I've got a lot of friends that their dad's their best friend and they go fishing and boating and do all these things with them. And it's really cool to see that and to tap into those guys and say, like, how are you guys best friends now? You know, what do you do different? And I find, going back to our conversation on communication, that's what it was.
Yeah.
It was being truthful, and it was being integral, and it was being open. You know, when we're able to communicate hardships, but we're also able to communicate successes and victories with our kids, that they see that's genuine to them. But if we're only just saying, well, I'm only going to tell you about the things that I did right, it's going to leave a big gaping hole for them to wonder, what did Dad do wrong? Because you may be able to fool them for a while, but eventually they're going to figure it out. And when they figure it out, you don't want it to be, "Oh, Dad was a liar. He told me all this stuff, but he did all this other stuff. Like, I don't trust him now." My son, my youngest, the other day, I said, "If you do X," I think it was, "if you eat all your lunch, you'll get a cookie after school," and whatever. Right. So I set the parameters, and then something shifted in his mind. He thought he did what was expected, and I didn't give him the reward that he thought he deserved. In my mind, it was very clear, and I can't remember the whole story, but he said, "Dad, you're a liar." And I stopped him and I said, "Hudson, let's build one truth right now. I will never lie to you." I said, "I will always tell you the truth. It may not be what you want to hear or how you want to hear it, but I'll always tell you the truth." I said, if I lie to you, then you have the right to call me a liar. But on this instance, you don't get to call me a liar, because I've worked really hard to never lie to you, to never tell you something that's untruthful. So when if that ever occurs, you can call me out, but this isn't it. And it really shaped how he spoke to me afterwards. And he actually came up in his 7-year-old heart and said, "Dad, I'm sorry I called you a liar. You're not. You're a great dad." But I wanted to make sure my wife, my sons, that they know I'm never going to lie to them. But if I did, they have full authority to call me out on it. And holding ourselves accountable.